So for more on this, I'm joined by a man who knows the UK economy inside out. Jens Larsen worked at the Bank of England for 12 years. His most recent role there was to provide financial market analysis to the rate-setting committee. He's also represented the UK on the IMF Executive Board. He's now Chief European Economist at RBC Capital. Jens, great to speak to you. Thanks so much for taking the time. So there you have it. First quarter GDP, we're talking about a 0.5% rise in line with what we were expecting. Enough to call it a rebound? You say in line with what was expected. It's true that that was what was expected as of yesterday. But if you go back 3 months, I think a lot of people were expecting more growth in Q1, a stronger rebound from the weakness in Q4. And I think actually the news here, if you want, is that the economy has moved sideways over Q4 and Q1. There's not very strong growth momentum here, not yet, at least. And as you said expectations, sure. But going back a couple of months, actually, this data doesn't look all that strong. It's not all that strong. So does that mean that underlying growth is basically stagnant? I don't think underlying growth is basically stagnant. I think that growth will recover towards the middle of this year. But you shouldn't be surprised, given what we've seen in terms of increases in prices, in terms of increases in taxes, in terms of the fiscal contraction that's on the way. I don't think we should be too surprised to see that growth has been weak in the fourth quarter and the first quarter of this year. Based on these figures, is the economy strong enough to withstand fiscal contraction? Strong enough to withstand fiscal contraction. The fiscal contraction is part of the reason why the economy isn't growing that strongly. I would say, is the economy ready to withstand a monetary contraction? And I don't think the MPC is going to conclude that the economy is ready to withstand that yet. I think the MPC is going to wait until at least November before it starts hiking rates. But based on these figures, do you think that the economy will be able to withstand a rate hike even at that point in time? That's a good question, and the economy will continue to be exposed, not just because of weak growth, but also because of these imbalances that are built up in the UK government and the UK household sector. So there's a lot of uncertainty for the UK economy over the coming years. But I think at some point, when growth starts returning to about trend levels, the MPC will judge that the balance of risk between the strong inflation rates that we've seen, the weakness of the growth rates we have seen now, that balance justifies a tightening in rates. But I don't think that point is now. I think that point is much later in the year. Jens, would you completely rule out right now the prospect of a rate hike before November? I wouldn't rule out anything, and I think the key point about the data today and a key point about the outlook is it's really very uncertain. So yes, it was bang in line with expectations, and we can pat ourselves on the back that we got that call right. But I think the point is we don't really know how strong underlying growth is. If that underlying growth picture changes, if it's strengthened, then I think at August rate hike could certainly be back on the cards. But equally, if it turns out that actually this is a manifestation of weak underlying growth, then November may be too aggressive a call. At the moment, I think the thing balances out on November. When are we going to get a clearer picture on where we are with that? Well, the clearer picture on growth will emerge gradually over the course of this quarter. That'll tell us about Q1. But of course, in Q2, we have lots of other distortions, including the royal wedding, the extra bank holiday, which will cause disruptions, if you want, in terms of the measured GDP and create a lot of uncertainty as to where growth is. Very brief one, Jens. Just talk to me about the risks of keeping rates so low for this length of time and beyond. Well, I think Andrew Sentence has been speaking about that, and I think he puts the MPC's worries very clearly. So sure, he's more aggressive than most in terms of calling for rate hikes, but the worry that inflation expectations are drifting, the worry that that high inflation will eventually manifest itself in higher wage claims, that I think is one that the MPC is worried about. Broadly speaking, the risk of the MPC losing credibility is surely something they are worried about, and therefore I think eventually that risk, that strong inflation outlook is one of the factors that will push the MPC towards tightening towards the end of this year. Really interesting to talk to you, Jens Larsen of RBC Capital Markets. Thank you so much. Come on the show again. Thank you.